Shit, I meant to pause and accidentally hit stop. Well, okay. Iron Widow, Jiren J. Zhao. I hope I'm pronouncing their name right. But this book was so cool. Queer themed sci-fi. Well, queer themed sci-fi retelling of the rise of China's only female emperor with mechs and telepathy and kaiju shit. Giant monsters. Yeah. And if you're not sold on it already, so glad the sequel's coming out this year. Actually, I think it might already be out. Heavenly Tyrant. I do kind of like how the book does not shy away from the fact that the protagonist is not a great person, but you can also completely understand why she's that way, and in fact, or given how shit her circumstances were, there probably wasn't any other way she could turn out. But hey, she's also probably going to tear down the patriarchy along the way. So, God forbid women do anything, right? So you're still you don't necessarily like her, but you're still rooting for her. Yeah. And, great way to get around the love triangle by just having them all sleep together anyway. It's a fun read. Looking forward to the sequel. Not much more to say than that. One was pretty popular too. Arguably the most popular book on this list, so most currently popular book on this list anyway. Let's go to Beach Read, which I referenced previously. This book might have benefited from low expectations. If you don't know, at the end of 2023, I cobbled together a list of the big book talk and booktube books of 2023, put them all on a spinny wheel, and it picked two for me. And this was the second of the two. The first one was not great, so maybe this benefited from that. But I enjoyed it despite the fact that I'm not really much of a romance reader. I'll put that between Phyllis Esposito and Pom Mall. Again, it's in a genre I don't particularly care for, and it also features a story that is fraught with potential to go horribly wrong. Anytime you have a novel where the main character or characters are novelists, you kind of run the risk of the book just completely going up its own ass, and this one did not do that. I'm really grateful for that. I think the ending is a little cliche, but I think that's to be expected. Romance readers are I don't think, from what I'm aware, romance readers aren't particularly forgiving of subversions. Not that I think no, this is not to say I don't think the main couple should have, it's a romance book. Of course, the romance book, they generally have one of two types of endings. It's happily ever after and happy for now. I'm not going to say which one of those this book is on the off chance that you want to check it out. But it did feel a little earned. I kind of wish it had happened differently, in the sense that how we get to there, I think happens a little quick. But I'm not upset that we got there, if that makes any sense at all. But yeah, I thought it was fine. I don't think I'm going to be reading any more Emily Henry in the future. She's kind of a name in this genre. And I think this one only had kind of an average score compared to the rest of her work. But so if someone were to hand me one of the books that has a higher Goodreads score than this one, I might check it out, but I don't plan on seeking it out for myself. But I did a short spoiler-free review of this one. on my channel. You can go check that out. I'll see if, hopefully I will remember to put something about it in the show notes. This has been a long ass recording, and I haven't been writing anything down. I should probably keep the note document with the show notes open while I'm editing this later. This thing's going to be more than 2 hours, even after I cut out all the pauses. Okay, another couple. Okay, here's some surprises for you. Chuck Tingle's Harriet Porber, Trans Wizard Harriet Porber. The first book being Trans Wizard Harriet Porber and the Bad Boy Parasoloth. Why is it? I have gotten this right so many times. Why am I fucking it up now that I'm actually needing to say it in a video? That's not. Fuck you, brain. Why are you doing this to me? If you're familiar with Chuck Tingle's oeuvre, you might actually be surprised that I'm putting both this and its sequel, the much easier to say Trans Wizard Harriet Porber and the Theater of Love, as high as I am. But they are actually genuinely good. To the point where there were a couple of times where I actually kind of sort of managed to forget that I was reading erotica novels because I was so invested into the characters, and then suddenly, the sucking off a strap thing. Okay, on an anthropomorphic dinosaur. Okay, no, okay, right, Chuck Tingle. Okay, but these are fun books, and I think they're worth reading, if only because, just because I imagine their existence makes J.K. Rowling sad. If you're one of those types of persons who just does not like meta humor at all, then you can probably skip these. If you can't handle explicit sex in books, you should probably skip these. But other than that, I think these are enjoyable and they're fun. And I'm not much of an erotica reader, actually. Which you might realize on account of, if you recognize any of these other titles down here, these two are the only erotica books on this entire list, and this is covering a 6-year period. I think these two are as explicit as it gets, really. But I enjoyed them both immensely. And they're not subtle in the parody either. The main antagonist in Harriet Porber in the Theater of Love is a production company called Just Kidding Recreations. Again, not subtle. Parasaurolophilus. Fuck. Again, I have gotten it right so many times when talking to people, like at work or whatever, but suddenly I sit down in front of a microphone and boom, gone. All right, next is a work of nonfiction called We Had a Little Real Estate Problem. It is a book about... excuse me. It is a book about Native Americans in comedy, from vaudeville to stand-up to sketch shows. It's pretty good. I learned quite a bit reading it. There are some people who I actually did not know were of Native American ancestry. Yeah, that's... I admittedly bought it solely on the title, but I'm glad I read it. Put it between... Where am I going to put it on here? Let me think. Yeah, that is a fun title. We had a little real estate problem. It actually comes from a joke from Native American comedian Charlie Hill. It was the first Native American comedian to ever feature on The Tonight Show. I'm going to put it... I also learned quite a bit more about Will Rogers than I had before. It is kind of amazing how much of his connection... Because he was actually of Native American descent, but a lot of that kind of got glossed over after he died. I'll put it between the sequels in 1984. There we go. Where I live, I pass by, on my way to work, I pass by a theater that has a mural of Will Rogers on it. Okay. Up next, we have Moonlighting, an oral history about the TV show starring Bruce Willis and Sybil Shepherd. And reading this book, I realized that I remembered a lot less of the show than I thought I did, but that's only to be fair because I was barely even... Fuck, I was like 6 when the show went off the air. I'm honestly surprised I remember any of it at all, actually, or let alone that my parents let me watch it. But yeah, Bruce Willis didn't contribute to this because I don't think it had been announced yet, but I think he was also going through his health issues at the time that this was being written. Yeah, it's what it is. It's an oral history. The writers talk to as many people as they could find who are both alive and willing to talk about making Moonlighting, which was a very popular show in the 80s. If you like Moonlighting, you'll like this book. If you don't like or never heard of Moonlighting, why would you want to read it in the first place? I didn't particularly learn that much, actually. The behind-the-scenes drama for this show was kind of infamous. I think even a lot of people who didn't watch the show were aware that Bruce Willis and Sybil Shepherd kind of hated each other. If there is one thing I can definitely give to this book is I think it kind of puts to bed the myth that the show... that it was the main characters finally sleeping together that actually killed it. There's a thing that people call the moonlighting effect, where after years of will they or won't they, if the two characters who are in a will they or won't they kind of thing get together, the show's going to just nosedive in the ratings. But what a lot of people who say that about Moonlighting don't seem to realize is that at the time that episode was coming out, the show also had to go on a long break because first, Sybil Shepherd had to go on maternity leave early because she was in a high-risk pregnancy with twins. And then there was also like a writer's strike, was it a writer's strike? I think there was some kind of strike that also delayed production. So they really had no chance to... Yeah, the writers were kind of screwed on that because on the timing. Oh, and also Bruce Willis was going off to film Die Hard. So if they'd been able to keep the momentum from that episode going, they probably could have avoided that slump. But because of the maternity leave and Die Hard and the strike, that episode where they slept together was like the last episode for quite a while. They didn't really get a chance to do much of a follow-up until like almost a year later. That was not... So in that sense, the show was kind of doomed. I think it's safe to say the show was doomed because of that, not because of the characters sleeping together. Whew. I've been at this for way too long. I shouldn't have been. Why did I decide to do this? Okay. Star Trek Picard, Rogue Elements. I guess this is another one of those cases where as far as the producers are concerned, it's considered canon and nothing on the shows have contradicted it. This novel focuses on the character of Rios, who was one of my favorite characters created for Picard, who got completely fucked over in season 2. Honestly, the entire show got fucked over in season 2, but let's not get into that. We'll be here all day. This mainly focuses on how Rios came to own La Sirena. I enjoyed it. It adds a bit to the lore. It manages to bring back, in a way, the characters from the race from... Not the characters, because they would all be long dead. But the race from the TOS episode, A Piece of the Action, the one with the gangster planet, the Sigma Iosians. It brings them back in a way that actually serves that serves the story and doesn't feel too fan servicey. I mean, it's fan servicey simply by virtue of being a callback to a TOS episode, but, you know, they're not there just for the sake of being there. No, the character, the Ioshan character we get is not there just for the sake of being there, and I hope they keep the whole Ioshans can't get drunk thing canon. Uh, I really hope. I know I'll never get to showrun a Star Trek series, but if I ever did, I would want one of the main characters to be an Ioshan. I think there's a lot of potential for fun with that. I'm going to put that between Midsolar Murders and Harriet Borber. Yeah, season 2 really did Rios dirty. There was no fucking reason for him to decide to stay in the 21st century after what he went through. He could have brought that doctor and her son into 2400. Season 2 takes place during 2400, season 3 takes place during 2401, right? Yeah, he could have brought them to the 25th century. I mean, there's precedence for this in Star Trek. Dr. Gillian Taylor, anyone? But yeah, I really liked it, and I wish that they hadn't sidelined Rios completely. I mean, honestly, every Picard original, except for Raffi, ended up getting fucked over in the end, and I don't know if I will ever stop being mad about that. But yeah, I think if you're going to read any of the Star Trek Picard books, this is the one I would recommend. Although, to be fair, it's also the only one I've read. But yeah, Star Trek Picard, Rogue Elements. It does also bring back a TNG villain, but in a way that I think kind of makes sense given what that character's profession was. Okay. Going back to nonfiction, we have The Trouble with White Women, A Counter-History of Feminism. If you're pissed off about the title, that's a you problem. That's The Trouble with White Women. It's not at all. I mean, some like lazy people would try to assume from the title that the book is arguing that white women are bad, and this is not the case. It's just simply pointing out that there are many women of color in history that have contributed as much, if not more, to the cause of feminism in like the 18th, 19th, and early 20th century, who got completely looked over. And that some of the white women who are seen as heroes from that time period, well, they may have done some good, perhaps even a lot of good. They were deeply flawed, and putting them up on a pedestal is not the best of ideas. We can respect the good work they did do without treating them like they were saints. And I mean, the book also is fair enough to point out, and when it brings up some of the women of color as sort of the format of the book is each chapter is about a white feminist icon and a woman of color who was active at roughly the same time, and comparing them to each other. And the book is also open about the flaws that some of those women of color had. You have like an escaped slave who was also unfortunately deeply homophobic or something like that. I'm probably butchering that. It's been a few years since I've read it, but I do think this is kind of one of my essential reads for people who... I have a list of books that I consider essential reads for people who want to understand my politics. And, in addition to The Reactionary Mind, which is on this list, and The Shock Doctrine, which I've mentioned, there's also Playing the Whore, The Work of Sex Work by Melissa Gira Grant. And I put The Trouble with White Women on that list as well. I learned about some amazing women of color, or at least interesting women of color who might have been somewhat problematic despite their good works. I learned about them that I never learned about them in schools. They never got to have any short-lived coins. They don't have any societies that are named after them that are either genuine or ironic. Like how the Susan B. Anthony group is, like the Susan B. Anthony Society is like a right-wing group, and, don't trust them. And also Susan B. Anthony really wasn't so great herself, but it's a whole other thing. I'll put Trouble with White Women in amazing, but at the bottom of amazing. Yeah, that's a good place for it. Batman 89, the trade comic of a miniseries that I don't know if it was based on any of the unused scripts, but when Tim Burton was going to do the third Batman movie and it was going to introduce a Robin who was actually who wasn't white and was going to have Billy D. Williams, Harvey Dent finally become Two Face. This is based on that, and it's pretty good. Where'd you go? Where'd you go? It's pretty good. I will put it above. I'll put it between Phyllis. Yeah, I'll put it between Phyllis Esposito and Beach Read. I'm glad I read it. I didn't. I mean, I don't know if the movie would have worked because, to be honest, I think looking back, I don't know that Tim Burton's Batman movies have held up that well, particularly Returns. I mean, I wouldn't call them bad, but I think we've gotten better Batman stories since then. I do think it is kind of sad that there's basically studio politics that kept him from doing the third one. And I'm glad that Billy D. Williams at least finally got to play Two-Face in the Lego Batman movie. But I think it would have been interesting. I think early 1990s is probably, because the internet wasn't ubiquitous yet, it is probably would have been the last point in history where they could have gotten away with doing a Black Robin in a movie and not had a massive freak out over. I mean, the racists definitely would have had a problem with it, but they also wouldn't have had access to a bunch of lonely nerds that they could manipulate into being convinced that a Black Robin was an attack on them personally. Bel Canto. It's a book about a hostage situation in Latin America where one of the hostages is an opera singer and another hostage is a Japanese businessman, and the two of them like the Japanese businessman's assistant ends up having an affair with one of the, well, not an affair, he wasn't married, ends up sleeping with one of the tourists who might have been underage, terrorists, with one of the hostage takers who might have been underage. I hope not. But it's suggested she might have been. And it has a sad ending that, I mean, I guess makes sense, but doesn't feel very satisfying. It's a book. It's certainly a book. I think I'll put that between the TNG graphic novel, and Proof of Collusion. Yeah. Gender Euphoria, that's a anthology, nonfiction anthology that I actually backed on Unbound, I think it's called. It's sort of like Kickstarter, but with a focus on books. Edited by Laura Kate Dale, who does the closed captions for Stephanie Sterling's videos for the Jimquisition. It's just trans and gender nonconforming people telling positive stories about their life, and that's a good thing. And it's kind of annoying me at the moment that I can't remember any of them off the top of my head, but I'm also kind of starting to not feel so great right now, and I've been recording for almost 2 hours, so I'm not going to hold that against the book at all. I will put that I'll put that in the pretty good between. Actually, you know what? I'm actually going to go ahead. I'll actually put it at the top of pretty good. There you go. The Green Arrow, 80th anniversary graphic novel. Some short stories featuring the character at different points and in his comic book history. Kind of setting aside the rolling timeline to just treat the character as if he was, just ignoring the rolling timeline stuff, because I know Marvel officially does that. I think DC probably does it too. They've just never explicitly said it. It's fine. I'll put it above the DC Prides. I'll put it. It's gonna go on. It's okay. I'll put it. actually, yeah, I'll put it above the DC Prides. The DC Prides, except for the first one, of course. The first one I have up here. But below How the Irish Became White. Yeah, I think it's the 80th anniversary of Green Arrow. There's really not much more to say about it. If you like Green Arrow, you'll enjoy it. If you don't like Green Arrow, don't bother. I don't think it's going to change your mind. But still in DC, we've got a few more DC things going on here. I think apart from the one that's actually just called Marvels, there's not really any Marvel rep on here. Anyway, Galaxy, the Prettiest Star by Jadzia Axelrod. She's another one of those writers from the podcast novelist days. And I even met her. I met Mer Lafferty too, actually. And Christiane Ellis. I met Jadzia at Balticon in 2009, though she had not come out yet and was there under her dead name and presenting as male. But I'm happy for her that she's come out and is transitioned. I'm also glad she's writing for DC. She's writing. She's got like a Hawk Girl miniseries. Yeah, it's either a miniseries or specifically a graphic novel. It's on my wish list. But Galaxy, the Prettiest Star is for a character that Jadzia Axelrod actually created for DC, and Galaxy actually shows up a few years older than she is here in Bad Dream. But I guess not trans in the strictest sense. The character was living as a male on Earth in hiding with a device to make her look human, and they were trying to make her look like a human boy. And it's all strictly metaphorical. She was never literally a boy at any point. She was never assigned a male at birth or anything like that. But having this device that made her look male was still kind of, you would call it dysphoric. And eventually the device breaks, and double whammy, her school's not only finding out that she's alien at a time in the DC timeline where the only alien that people seem to have any positive feelings of were Superman, was Superman and maybe Martian Manhunter. I'm not entirely sure about. DC timelines are so confusing anyway, but yeah, reading it seemed like this was at a point where if you weren't Superman, but you were an alien, people were going to be suspicious of you, even if you were a superhero. And so she has to deal with. So when the device breaks, she has to go back to school not only as a different gender than everybody remembered her being the day before, but also a different species. And it doesn't go great, but she does have people who care for her, including her talking corgi. It makes sense in context, I promise. And the character is just absolutely adorable. I highly recommend it. Why did I put it why did I leave it at the bottom of it was okay, I guess? I think I was just putting it there and then waiting to move it. Yeah, because I have to do the whole, this thing doesn't automatically scroll while I'm holding on to it, so I had to start. And the point is, it's going in. I'm putting it into amazing. I'll put it between. I'll put it between. It Gets Better, except when it gets worse, and Sovereign. Yeah, I think that's a good place for it. I think Galaxy is actually just her hero name. I forget what her real name is. And I don't mean real name in like dead name, but I mean like real name as in real name. Like Nicole Maine's real name is Nicole. I only know her dead name because I read this book down here. I will not be using it because that's just not how I roll. Okay, we go into one of the other memoirs I read in 2024. I read this one based solely on the hype because I had not watched anything on Nickelodeon around the time that she was on it, because I did watch Nickelodeon around the time of like Hey Dude, but Even though I didn't really know who Jeanette McCurdy was per se before this book came out, the hype around the book made it seem really interesting. And of course, the title, I'm Glad My Mom Died, is certainly an attention getter. So I decided to go ahead and buy it when I had a Barnes & Noble gift card for Christmas at the end of 2022. And no, was it? No, sorry, at the end of 2023. And it is really, really freaking good. I'm going to put it between Savior's Sister and Iron... Yeah, I'm going to put it between Savior's Sister and Iron Widow, I think. I think it's a testament to how well written it is that this actress that I knew very little about, and going into it because I never watched any of the TV shows she was on, and I was engaged, I was interested, and holy crap, her... Ooh. It's remarkable. She survived all the bullshit, all the emotional bullshit her mother put her through. Yeah, I appreciated the book. Definitely has a dark sense of humor, but you know, it's not mean spirited at all, which is great. Which that's always a risk when you're doing dark humor, is that it can cross over from dark into just plain mean. And mean comedy is definitely not my thing. Shouldn't be anybody's thing, honestly, in my opinion. But dark is fine, and this book earns it. And that cover definitely leaves an impression too. So, you know, you don't actually have to have been someone who watched iCarly or Sam and Cat to appreciate this book. So, because I think it's just an interesting story. You don't have to have been a fan of this actress's, well, I guess former actress now. You don't have to be a fan of her work to find her story engaging and to find how she managed to make some degree of peace with herself and her mom. You know, something worth engaging with. Did I mention I've been recording for over 2 hours? I bet that even after I finish editing, this video is still going to be over 2 hours. Okay. Supergirl, World of Tomorrow, another trade of a mini. This is apparently going to be the basis for the Supergirl movie for the new DCEU. Again, kind of fuzzy on where it is on the timeline, but if the movie gets even close to the trade, I think it is going to have been a great watch. I'll put it between Harriet Porber and Ramses the Damned there, I think. The author is a bit divisive, and I can kind of see why. A lot of people seem to not particularly like his Batman stuff, but I can't speak to that. He did write Heroes in Crisis, and the less said about that bullshit event, the better. But I think Tom King told a good story with this character who doesn't usually get good stories. So, looking forward to the movie to see how it turns out. I guess I could say more, but yeah, again, over 2 hours. I gotta try rushing through these, I guess. Songbook, a nonfiction book by Nick Hornby, the guy who wrote High Fidelity, and which I haven't read. And fuck, what was it? I already said High Fidelity, didn't I? Yeah, High Fidelity, Fever Pitch, which was changed from soccer to baseball for the Jimmy Fallon movie that I don't care about. Songbook, it's just a book about songs that mean a lot to the author, particularly with regards to helping him connect with his autistic son. It's fine. I'll put it over BSG versus BSG, but that's about it where it's going to go there. Earth to Moon Unit Zappa's memoir. Woo, boy, and I thought Jeanette McCurdy's mom was rough. This was the last book, actually, I finished in 2024, but it's not the last one we'll be talking about because of how things work, but she led a very interesting life. She had very interesting parents in ways both good and bad, because, like, holy shit, as horribly as Gail Zappa treated her, you can't deny that she did get some things right. At least with regards... Well, okay. You know those people who they kind of seem to have... They have, like, good politics, but aren't necessarily good people? I put Gail Zappa in that category. She's... Frank was... Neither of them were, like... They're not... You know, when you think about kind of abusive parents, whatever idea you have in your head when you think of an abusive parent, odds are neither Gail nor Frank Zappa fit into that mold, but it would also still be fair to call at least Gail an abuser. Frank might be more fair to say he was just negligent. Not necessarily ill-intentioned, just unaware, maybe. Yeah. But yeah, just the way Gail Zappa would, like, essentially turn her own children against each other for her own benefit, and how she screwed them over with her own will, how she hid Frank Zappa's will for years, so his children did not actually know what they were supposed to have been getting when he died until after Gail died. And it's just such a sad story, but it does kind of end on a hopeful note, because while Moon is not particularly close to two of her three siblings, it ends on the possibility that maybe there's that relationship can be repaired, and so there's that. But oof, Frank Zappa was a great musician, and he wasn't a complete monster, but he was definitely not a good... He wasn't the worst father in the world, but he wasn't a particularly good one either. But although, at the end of the day, Gail Zappa is kind of the real, I guess you could call her, villain of the story. Again, not entirely irredeemable, but goddamn, she probably should not have had children. Let's see here. The Guest by Emma Cline. This was the first of the two books. The first of the two books that I got from that spinny wheel thing I talked about earlier with Beach Read, and also the first of the books to go into almost a complete absence of good. You know, now that I think about it, might actually end up being the only one in that category. I did not really expect that. Anyway, yeah, I kind of talked about it in another video. I'm going to just link to that one in the show notes. I stand my opinion on the opinions I expressed in that video. Let's move on. The DC Book of Pride. I mean, admittedly, I only bought it because Dramer was going to be in it, and because I knew the writer. This is another one. This is Jedzia Axelrod. It's sort of the format of like a kid's dictionary with, well, no, not dictionary, like sort of a who's who kind of book. It just has, you know, the character on one side, you have the character, and on the other side, on the opposite page, you have like information about the character, what issue they first appeared in, their power set, what character's orbit they're in. Like, you know, is this someone you know mainly from the Superman books? Is this someone you mainly know from the Batman books? Is this someone you would mainly know from the Green Lantern? You know, that kind of thing. And I mean, it is, at the end of the day, it is just kind of a list, but it's got some good artworks. There's some characters in there that I actually didn't know that much about, because despite what you might think, given how much DC is on here, I'm not like a DC obsessive or anything. So there are some characters that I might have heard of, but didn't really particularly know a ton about. So, but it's fine. I'll put it, between Cassandra Killjoy and The Last Sun. There we go. It's, honestly, one could argue it's really more of a reference book than a book in the sense that all of these other ones are books. Let's see. The 100,000 Kingdoms, N.K. Jemisin. This is another one of the ones where, weirdly, even though I liked it, I don't feel like reading the rest of the trilogy. But I'm also more for I'm all for more books with non-white protagonists. Kind of interesting how the main character no, that's spoiler territory. How the main character manages to remain a part of the story. Now that might also be that might have also given away too much, but fuck it. Yeah. It's interesting. I dug the world building to an extent, but I couldn't quite. I don't know what it was that made me decide not to continue on with the trilogy. Because again, I liked it, but I think I'll put that between If I Was Your Girl and 'Twas the Might Before Christmas. There you go. Yeah, it's like, okay, yeah. I think the good way to put it is, I liked it, I just wish I liked it more. There we go. Strays by Magdalene Rose. Well, Magdalene Wyatt, but I know her mainly as Magdalene Rose, YouTuber. She's the one I've supported on Patreon the longest of everyone I've supported on Patreon. There's supposed to be a part 2. I know she's working on it. She also did the title card for season 11 of Shameless Cash Grab, my main show. She's going to do the title card for season 12. But again, going through a lot. So that's the season 12 title card's delayed. Part 2 of Strays is coming along. I will grant that she probably should have tried to find, if she couldn't afford a copy editor, she probably should have had a few more probably should have had a really close friend take a look at it, because it's like, the story does make sense, but there are also some kind of glaring grammar and spelling errors. A few there. I think some of those actually got fixed, since this is a self-publish. So she had the ability to do that fairly easily. But I bought it like as soon as it became available, so I wouldn't have had any of those corrections. I'll put it in okay, I guess, ahead of Songbook and BSG versus BSG. I am really looking forward to part 2, and I really hope things improve for her soon, because I'm kind of, I mean, obviously, I'm like, I am so tired of the universe just constantly kicking her when she's down, and like, God, if I'm frustrated about it, you can imagine how she feels. Okay, last but far from least, Remake by Connie Willis. While everyone else was looking around waiting for dystopia to be like 1984 or Brave New World, it actually ended up being a bit closer to 2 other books instead. Jennifer Government by Max Berry, which I read during college, and Remake by Connie Willis. In the world of Remake, there is no such thing as a new movie. It is only remixes of pre-existing material. When you go out to a movie premiere, you are going to see a new version of Raiders of the Lost Ark where Indy is played by Cary Grant. It's stuff like that. And of course, there's things where, they get mandates from on top to try and to remove any use of alcohol or cigarette use in older movies. There's a kind of a running subplot where the studio that owns the likeness to Russ Tamblyn is trying to sue some indie producers who made a movie using his likeness circa West Side Story to make a snuff film. Our main character is trying to find a way to remove alcohol, specifically, I think, tobacco from older movies in a way that doesn't affect the plot. And he meets a woman who wants to be an actress despite the fact that there hasn't been a new movie made in years, so nobody really wants to be an actor anymore. It is basically kind of the worst case scenario for where the deep fake shit is going. I don't think the deep fake stuff we have will actually ever get good enough to be the way it is in this book, but Oh fuck! If a lot of people, this book, sorry, does not get talked about in terms of dystopic science fiction, the way stuff like 1984, Brave New World, or even Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, the book that became Blade Runner. It deserves to be, though. I'm putting that one. And I'm actually even going to put that one above Bad Dream. Between Reactionary Mind and Bad Dream. It's remake by Connie Willis. I highly recommend it. It is a great book. A bit disturbing and oddly prescient considering it was written in the early 90s, but it's definitely a great book. Okay. And that's the last one. I'm not going to waste any time on a coda. Have fun. Stay safe. Don't read The Guest, Hark, or Brimstone's Night. Probably don't read H.L. Mencken either, honestly. I mean, it's not all bad, but there are modern writers who make some of the same observations that he did in ways that are a lot less eugenicsy.